Detachment is often misunderstood. Many people hear the word and immediately imagine a kind of emptiness, an indifference, or even a refusal to care. They believe that detachment means turning away from life, from emotions, from responsibilities, and from the people they love. Yet this perception comes from a narrow and incomplete understanding of what detachment truly is. In its essence, detachment is not coldness but clarity, not distance but freedom, not avoidance but strength. It is the art of standing firm in yourself while still allowing life to flow through you without being consumed by it. Life brings with it an endless tide of experiences, moments of joy and loss, victories and defeats, bonds and separations. When one is attached, the heart is constantly pulled by these changing waves. One clings to pleasure, fearing its loss, and resists pain, wishing it would vanish. This constant push and pull drains energy, creates suffering, and traps the mind in cycles of reaction. Detachment breaks this pattern. It does not eliminate the experiences of joy, love, or sadness, but it shifts the way we hold them. Instead of being possessed by emotions, one learns to observe them, understand them, and let them pass. The strength of detachment lies in its ability to allow one to remain steady when everything else moves. Imagine the tree in a storm. Its branches sway with the wind, but its roots are deep and unmoving. The storm may rage, yet the tree stands because it does not resist the movement of the wind, nor cling to its own stillness. It simply allows. Detachment is like those roots, the silent strength that anchors you even when life around you changes direction. This strength is not harsh, not rigid, not cold. It is quiet, flexible, and alive. The confusion arises because detachment is often mistaken for emotional withdrawal. To withdraw from feeling is not detachment but suppression. Suppression hardens the heart, creates distance, and builds walls around the self. Detachment, on the other hand, opens the heart fully. It allows emotions to be felt in their depth but not to dominate the inner balance. One can love deeply yet not cling. One can grieve a loss yet not be destroyed. One can succeed without arrogance and fail without despair. This is the strength of detachment, the ability to remain whole in the midst of change. When you are detached, you are not refusing to care, you are refusing to be controlled. Attachment often disguises itself as love or devotion, but in truth, it carries fear of losing, fear of change, fear of uncertainty. This fear leads to grasping, holding tightly, and becoming dependent on things that are never permanent. Detachment removes the chains of fear. It does not mean abandoning love, but allowing love to be free of control. It does not mean neglecting responsibility, but approaching responsibility without being crushed by its weight. In detachment, there is a purer form of connection, one that is not bound by expectation or fear of loss. Consider water flowing through the hands. When one clenches the fist, trying to hold it, the water escapes. When one keeps the hands open, the water rests gently before moving on. Attachment is the clenched fist, detachment is the open palm. The strength lies not in forcing but in allowing. In this way, detachment teaches patience, acceptance, and resilience. Detachment also gives the mind space. A mind tangled in attachments cannot see clearly. It reacts out of habit, desire, and fear. But when one learns to step back, to release the constant grasping, the mind becomes calm and spacious. In this calmness, clarity arises, and decisions are no longer clouded by desperation. This clarity is strength, for it allows one to act with wisdom rather than impulse, with stability rather than confusion. The world will always test the strength of attachment. People will come and go, possessions will be gained and lost, circumstances will rise and fall. If one's peace depends on these shifting conditions, life becomes unstable. But detachment places peace within, where it cannot be stolen or destroyed. To be detached is to know that nothing outside has absolute power over the state of your being. This is not coldness, it is liberation. Even in relationships, detachment does not weaken connection. It strengthens it. When one is detached, love is not suffocating but nourishing. Care is not controlling but supportive. Presence is not needy but free. The bond grows because it is no longer rooted in fear of loss but in the simple joy of sharing life as it unfolds. In this way, detachment allows one to love more fully, not less. The strength of detachment also lies in its ability to transform suffering. Pain is inevitable, but attachment multiplies it. When one clings to what must change, the heart resists, and resistance creates deeper wounds. Detachment accepts impermanence, and in acceptance, pain does not become suffering. It is felt, acknowledged, and allowed to pass. This resilience, this capacity to endure and remain whole is true strength. Detachment is not the enemy of life, it is the companion of wisdom. It allows one to participate in life without drowning in it, to feel emotions without being enslaved by them, to act in the world without being bound by it. It is not coldness, for the detached person does not withdraw from the warmth of existence, but enters it more freely without fear. It is not weakness, for the detached person stands firm in the face of impermanence. Detachment is strength because it is freedom, and in freedom lies the power to meet life as it is, without losing the essence of who you are. A presence is not simply the act of being somewhere physically. It is not merely standing in a room, sitting among people, or existing within a moment of time. Presence is deeper than visibility. It is the art of being completely awake, alert, and attuned to what is unfolding right now. The power of presence lies in its ability to dissolve the weight of the past and the pull of the future. When presence is cultivated, the mind is no longer scattered like leaves in the wind, but instead rooted, grounded, and steady. Presence is not about doing more, it is about doing less, until the noise of distraction fades and the essence of life reveals itself. Most people live without presence. They move automatically, guided by routines, habits, and mental chatter. Their bodies are here, but their thoughts are elsewhere. One thought runs into another, replaying yesterday's stories or worrying about tomorrow's uncertainties. In this state, presence is lost, and with it the depth of living. Life becomes a blur, moments pass unnoticed, and the extraordinary hides within the ordinary. Yet the truth is, every moment has the potential to transform if one is present enough to experience it fully. Presence is power because it connects the mind with the body and both with the world. When one is present, awareness sharpens. The sound of footsteps becomes distinct, the breath becomes noticeable, the rhythm of the heart is felt. Nothing is added, yet everything feels more alive. This is because presence reveals what was always there but unseen beneath layers of distraction. In the simplest of actions, drinking water, walking, breathing, there is depth when presence is applied. This depth is the key to strength, clarity, and peace. To practice presence is to withdraw energy from constant thinking. Thinking has its place, it solves problems, plans, and analyzes. But when thinking becomes unceasing, it clouds the ability to live in the here and now. The mind creates stories, illusions, and scenarios that may never come to pass, consuming energy and stealing stillness. Presence interrupts this cycle. Presence is the reminder that the only real moment is this one. The breath that is entering and leaving the body is real. The ground under the feet is real. The sensations moving through the body are real. Everything else is thought. The power of presence also lies in its ability to transform relationships. When one is fully present with another, listening without distraction, watching without judgment, the connection deepens. People long not just to be heard, but to be truly seen. Presence offers this gift. It communicates silently, I am here with you, not only in body but in spirit and attention. This kind of presence nourishes trust, love, and respect. Without it, relationships weaken under the weight of neglect and half-hearted attention. Presence, therefore, is not only a personal practice, but also a gift to others. In presence, fear begins to dissolve. Fear belongs to the future, to what might happen. Regret belongs to the past, to what already happened. Presence is free of both. When one inhabits the moment, fear loses its grip, and the mind stops projecting suffering ahead of time. Presence makes space for courage because it grounds action in the reality of now. This is why many great traditions, from martial arts to meditation, emphasize the practice of presence. In combat, presence keeps one alive. In meditation, presence keeps one awake. In both, it is the source of clarity. The practice of presence is not complicated, but it requires discipline. It begins with awareness of the breath. The breath is always here, always now. By returning attention again and again to the breath, the mind is trained to stay anchored. From there, one expands to awareness of the body, the environment, the sensations. Each time the mind drifts into the past or the future, one gently returns it to the present. This training, repeated daily, strengthens the muscle of presence. Over time, it becomes natural, not forced. Presence also opens the door to inner silence. When thoughts no longer dominate, silence emerges. But silence is not emptiness. Silence is full. It is alive with awareness, alive with energy, alive with clarity. This silence is a source of strength because from it arises insight and understanding. When the mind is silent, Even for a moment, perception sharpens. One sees more clearly, listens more deeply, and understands without effort. This is the hidden power of presence, the silence that empowers. In daily life, presence transforms ordinary moments into extraordinary ones. Walking becomes meditation. Eating becomes gratitude. Working becomes purpose. Even resting becomes deep restoration. The quality of experience changes not because the external world has changed, but because awareness has changed. Presence reveals that fulfillment does not depend on what is happening, but on how deeply one is connected to what is happening. The absence of presence creates suffering. It makes life appear incomplete, as if something is always missing. It creates the illusion that happiness is somewhere else, in the future, in possessions, in achievements. But when presence is restored, it becomes clear that happiness is not later but now. The moment is enough because the moment is alive. The constant search dissolves and contentment arises naturally. The power of presence is the power to live fully. It does not require wealth, status, or control over circumstances. It requires only awareness. To live present is to live awake, to experience each breath, each step, each heartbeat as it truly is. Presence is not about changing the world outside, but about awakening to the world within and around. In presence, the past no longer chains, the future no longer frightens, and the moment itself becomes the teacher. One of the attraction is one of the most misunderstood forces in life. Many think of it only in terms of relationships, or in terms of drawing opportunities, wealth, or recognition. But attraction is much deeper than the superficial images we attach to it. It is not merely about pulling something toward us. It is about understanding why things appear in our orbit, why they respond to our energy, and why sometimes what we chase runs away while what we ignore comes closer. This is the paradox of attraction. The more we grasp at it, the more it escapes, yet the more we release, the more it flows naturally into our hands. When we think of attraction, we often imagine magnetism, a force that pulls two entities together. Yet a magnet has two poles, one that draws and one that repels. This duality mirrors the human experience of wanting and resisting, of desiring and fearing. The paradox lies here. To attract authentically, one must learn to release the desperation that often hides beneath desire. Energy is subtle, and when it carries a hidden vibration of lack, it repels the very thing one is asking for. To attract from a place of fullness, one must first confront the emptiness within and no longer try to fill it with external validation. The paradox also reveals itself in the tension between effort and ease. Many are told to work hard for their goals, to constantly strive, to never rest until they arrive at success. Yet others insist that one must simply believe and receive, that the universe provides when you relax. The truth is not found in either extreme. Effort without alignment becomes force, and force often pushes away what we desire. Ease without clarity becomes passivity, and passivity breeds stagnation. The art of attraction is the balance between action and surrender, to take conscious steps while holding no rigid attachment to the outcome. Attraction cannot be faked. One may try to speak words of positivity, affirm dreams, or imagine scenarios of abundance, yet beneath these practices lies the deeper vibration of the heart. If the heart is filled with fear, resentment, or doubt, then these silent signals echo louder than spoken affirmations. Energy speaks before words do. The paradox is that we may convince ourselves we are attracting through thought, yet the reality we manifest comes from what we embody. Therefore, the journey is not toward controlling the outside, but toward refining the inside. Another layer of the paradox shows itself in relationships. Often, when one chases love, the other retreats. When one clings too tightly, the other seeks freedom. But when one is rooted in their own center, radiant in their own being, love naturally gravitates toward them. This does not mean to withdraw into cold indifference, but to cultivate an inner wholeness that does not beg for completion from another. The paradox is that true attraction arises not from wanting, but from being. When you no longer need, you attract more. When you no longer chase, you become the magnet. This principle extends into every area of life. In work, when one is desperate for recognition, approval, or success, their actions carry a nervous vibration that others sense. Opportunities then seem distant, delayed, or withheld. Yet, when one pours themselves fully into the craft, into the process, into the purity of effort without obsession for the reward, success begins to approach in unexpected ways. The paradox is that the reward often comes only when you stop demanding it. Attraction also lives within time. Many hold on to rigid expectations when it should happen, how it should happen, who it should happen with. They bind themselves to an imagined timeline, and when reality moves differently, frustration and resistance arise. Yet the universe does not bend to impatience. Timing has its own intelligence, often unseen but always precise. The paradox is that by letting go of time, we align with time more perfectly. When we release the demand for control, life moves us exactly where we need to be, often faster than if we had tried to push the river. To live with the paradox of attraction is to live with humility. It is to recognize that you are both a creator and a participant, both one who directs energy and one who receives guidance. It is not to stand above life demanding, but to walk with life in partnership. The magnet draws, but it also repels, and wisdom is to know when your energy is repelling rather than attracting. In silence, in awareness, in reflection, one can notice this subtle truth. Attraction is not a game of tricks or manipulation. It is not about appearances, surface charm, or rehearsed words. It is about resonance. Resonance is created when thought, feeling, and action harmonize. When what you think is aligned with what you feel, and what you feel is aligned with what you do, then the signal you emit is clear and powerful. The paradox is that when you stop trying to convince the world becomes convinced. When you stop pretending, life responds to your authenticity. The paradox of attraction is not meant to confuse but to awaken. It shows us that life does not yield to grasping hands but to open palms. It teaches us that desire is not wrong, but attachment binds it. It reveals that attraction is not magic but alignment, not manipulation but truth. To understand this paradox is to shift from asking, how can I get what I want? To, how can I embody what I seek? For when embodiment is achieved, attraction ceases to be a pursuit and becomes a natural unfolding. There is a fundamental difference between responding to life and reacting to life. Reaction is immediate, unfiltered, and often uncontrolled. It comes from a place where emotions take the driver's seat and reason becomes a passenger. Self-mastery, however, is the capacity to remain aware even in the storm of emotions, to step back and observe what is happening within before allowing it to spill outward. To understand this difference is to begin walking the path of true strength. Most people live as if they are slaves to their emotions. Anger arises and they act in anger. Fear arises and they retreat in fear. Jealousy arises and they are consumed by jealousy. This cycle repeats endlessly, not because it has to, but because they never trained the mind to recognize emotions as energies that can be observed rather than forces that must control. To master the self is not to suppress these emotions, but to build awareness so strong that even when a wave of anger or sadness appears, it is not able to drown the mind. Self-mastery is not about becoming cold or detached. It is about cultivating clarity. Imagine a still lake. When the surface is calm, you can see the reflection of the sky clearly. When the surface is disturbed, all clarity disappears. Our inner state works in the same way. Emotional reaction disturbs the surface of the mind and clarity disappears. Decisions made in such states often bring regret later. But when the mind is calm, when emotions are acknowledged yet not allowed to dominate, then one can see situations clearly and respond with wisdom rather than impulse. Training begins with awareness. Most people do not even realize they are reacting until after the reaction has already occurred. Words are spoken in anger, and only later comes the regret. But awareness can be sharpened. It is possible to sense the arising of emotion in the body, the tightening of the chest, the quickening of the breath, the racing of the heart. By recognizing these signs, the individual gains a moment of choice. In that moment, a pause becomes possible, and in that pause lies the seed of self-mastery. The pause is powerful. It is not long, sometimes it is just a breath, a brief step back before acting. Yet in that pause, one shifts from being controlled by emotion to becoming the observer of emotion. The wave still comes, but you are no longer drowning. You are standing on the shore, watching it rise and fall. With practice, this pause grows stronger, and the space between emotion and reaction expands. To achieve this, discipline is required. Just as the body becomes strong through repeated training, the mind becomes stable through consistent practice. Meditation, breathing exercises, or simple mindful awareness throughout the day build the muscle of observation. Each time you notice an emotion without acting on it, you strengthen the capacity to master it. Each time you allow yourself to feel without letting that feeling dictate your behavior, you move closer to self-mastery. It is important to understand that emotions are not enemies. They are signals, energies that arise naturally as part of being human. Anger can point to injustice, sadness can reflect loss, fear can indicate danger. These signals have their place, but they were never meant to rule us. When we let emotions govern our actions blindly, we become prisoners of fluctuating moods. When we recognize them as passing energies, we reclaim our freedom. Self-mastery over emotional reaction is not achieved overnight. It is a path often challenging because emotions can be strong and persuasive. Yet each small step on this path creates transformation. The one who once shouted in anger learns to breathe before speaking. The one who once acted out of fear learns to face discomfort without retreating. The one who once drowned in jealousy learns to witness it without letting it poison the heart. These small victories accumulate until the inner state becomes steady, like a mountain that remains unmoved by wind or rain. Consider also the effect this mastery has on relationships. Most conflicts between people are not about the actual situation, but about uncontrolled reactions. Words spoken in heat, actions taken in impulse, these create wounds that might last longer than the moment itself. When one person develops self-mastery, the dynamic changes. Their calm presence becomes an anchor. Instead of adding fuel to fire, they bring water. Instead of escalating conflict, they diffuse it. This is not weakness, it is strength of the highest form. In many traditions, mastery over the self is seen as greater than mastery over others. To conquer another is to exercise force. To conquer oneself is to exercise wisdom. When you master your reactions, you are no longer tossed around by circumstances. External events may still happen, challenges may still come, but you carry within you the strength to remain steady. This inner stability is what gives rise to true confidence and resilience. The practice is simple but not easy. Pay attention. Breathe. Pause. Observe the emotion without becoming it. Train consistently as you would train the body. Over time, you will notice the difference. The same situations that once provoked immediate reaction no longer hold the same power over you. The storms still come, but you are no longer caught in them. You stand rooted, aware, and free within yourself. There is a natural force in the universe that cannot be seen, but can always be felt. It is the quiet pull that draws people, opportunities, and energy toward us without needing to chase, to beg, or to struggle. This force is magnetism. And one of the deepest sources of true magnetism comes not from what you own, not from what you display, but from the independence you cultivate within yourself. Independence is not merely the absence of dependence, it is the presence of inner stability, the ability to stand firmly rooted regardless of external conditions. When someone develops independence, they begin to radiate a strength that others intuitively sense. This strength becomes a beacon, and it draws in precisely what aligns with it. Independence creates magnetism because it signals to the world that your energy is not needy, not desperate, and not clinging. When you are no longer grasping at external validation or chasing after recognition, you shift into a different frequency. You become self-sustaining, like a fire that burns without requiring constant fuel from outside sources. People are naturally drawn to this type of energy because it feels stable, it feels trustworthy, and it feels free. The paradox is that the more you try to hold on to things, the more they resist you, but the more you let go and stand on your own, the more life brings things toward you. Independence is therefore not just a personal quality, but a magnetic field that changes how the universe responds. To embody independence, one must first confront the patterns of reliance. Reliance often hides itself in subtle ways, relying on approval to feel worthy, relying on companionship to avoid loneliness, relying on outcomes to measure success. Each of these dependencies weakens the core because it places your center of gravity outside yourself. But independence begins when you reclaim that center. When you draw back the scattered pieces of yourself that were placed in other people's hands, in future expectations, or in fragile circumstances. As you reclaim them, you become whole, and wholeness naturally attracts wholeness. Independence is not isolation. It is not about building walls or rejecting connection. On the contrary, true independence allows for deeper and healthier connections because they are no longer built on neediness or attachment. When you stand firm in your independence, you can meet others from a place of choice rather than compulsion. You are not with them because you must be, but because you want to be. This distinction is subtle yet powerful, and it is precisely what makes the bond magnetic. People are drawn to those who do not need them but still value them. It creates an irresistible balance of strength and openness. The magnetic quality of independence can also be seen in how it affects the mind. A dependent mind is restless, constantly scanning for reassurance, constantly pulled by the fear of losing. But an independent mind is calm, steady, and clear. This calmness becomes noticeable to others. It radiates a type of certainty that does not require words. When you walk into a room without carrying the invisible chains of dependence, you shift the atmosphere. You do not need to announce your presence. Your presence speaks on its own. This is the silent magnetism of independence. When independence is cultivated, it transforms how energy flows. Instead of energy leaking outward in pursuit of approval or clinging to unstable attachments, it turns inward, strengthens the core, and then radiates outward naturally. Imagine a tree whose roots run deep. It does not depend on the weather of a single season because its foundation is secure. The strength of its independence allows it to grow tall, bear fruit, and provide shade. People feel safe beneath it, not because the tree demands anything, but because its very being radiates stability. In the same way, a person grounded in independence becomes a source of quiet magnetism to those around them. Independence also aligns closely with authenticity. When you no longer rely on others to dictate your worth, you free yourself to live in alignment with who you truly are. Authenticity is magnetic because it is rare. Many wear masks to be accepted, to be validated, to fit into expectations. But independence gives you the courage to drop the mask and show your real self. And when the real self is revealed, the energy it radiates is unmistakable. It draws in those who resonate with it and gently repels those who do not. This natural filtering is another aspect of magnetism. Independence ensures that what comes into your life is aligned with your true frequency. To live with magnetism through independence requires patience and discipline. The habits of dependence are often deeply ingrained, reinforced by culture, upbringing, and fear. But with awareness, each dependency can be released. Each time you choose self-reliance over external crutches, your field strengthens. Each time you stand in solitude without feeling empty, your energy expands. Each time you speak and act without the need for approval, your magnetism grows. Slowly, independence shifts from an effort into a natural state of being. There is profound beauty in this journey. The more independent you become, the more you realize that magnetism is not about pulling everything toward you, but about aligning so clearly with your essence that what is meant for you finds its way effortlessly. You no longer chase, you no longer grasp, you no longer beg. You embody, you radiate, you attract. Independence turns you into a living magnet, and the universe responds to this vibration with precision and grace. Freedom is not just a word that appears in books or speeches. It is a force, subtle yet undeniable, that moves beneath the surface of human experience. When you encounter it, you feel it in your bones, in your breath, and in your very being. There is something about freedom that draws us in, something that cannot be silenced or contained, no matter how much we try to distract ourselves. It is not about external conditions alone, but about the release of inner chains that hold the mind, the emotions, and the spirit captive. Why is freedom so irresistible? Because at the core of every human being there exists an innate longing for expansion. We do not seek confinement, we do not crave smallness. Even in the most difficult situations, a part of us searches for a way out, for a door, for a crack in the wall that suggests the possibility of light. It is this drive toward openness that makes freedom not just appealing but unavoidable. The individual who tastes it, even for a moment, can never go back to the old state of living in shadows. Consider how easily one notices the weight of restrictions. When something binds you, when a thought clings to you, when a memory keeps you captive, the entire body, mind system senses the heaviness. You might carry it for years unaware of how much energy is consumed by holding on. Yet the moment that restriction is lifted, the contrast is undeniable. There is a sudden lightness, a new breath, as though the lungs had been waiting for this release for lifetimes. This is why freedom draws us so deeply. It is the natural state we were always meant to live in, not a special privilege to be earned, but an essence to be remembered. Freedom is irresistible because it is not something foreign to us. It is not external, not outside the human being. It is the truth of what we are beneath conditioning, fear, and expectation. When people struggle to understand why they feel restless or why success does not bring peace, the answer often lies in this They have not yet recognized that freedom is missing. The soul cannot be bribed with comfort or distracted with achievements. It knows when it is confined, and it keeps calling, pulling, urging the person to remember what lies beyond the cage. It is also important to see that freedom is not merely the absence of rules or obligations. That is a shallow interpretation. True freedom arises when there is clarity, when the inner world is no longer dictated by attachment, aversion, or confusion. When the mind is silent enough to observe, when the emotions are balanced enough to flow without overwhelming, when the body is disciplined enough to support stillness and movement, then freedom begins to reveal itself as a harmony that cannot be shaken. The irresistible quality of freedom comes from the deep recognition that it aligns with our truest nature. There is a reason why people cling to freedom even when it costs them everything. History is filled with examples of individuals who would rather risk loss than live without liberty. This is not irrational, it is the deepest rationality. For without freedom, all other gains are hollow. A golden cage is still a cage, and a comfortable prison remains a prison. The human being at its essence cannot tolerate long-term confinement. It may adapt, it may survive, but the spark within will always search for the crack where the light pours in. The irresistibility of freedom can also be observed in the small, subtle ways it influences daily life. Notice how the spirit relaxes when you are given space to express yourself. Notice how creativity blooms when there is no rigid structure suffocating it. Notice how relationships thrive when they are not built on control but on mutual respect. At every level, freedom invites growth. It allows what is hidden to emerge, what is dormant to awaken, and what is suppressed to rise into the light. That is why even in silence, even in solitude, freedom feels like expansion, while its absence feels like contraction. One of the most profound realizations comes when you see that freedom is not given, it is discovered. No one outside can hand it to you. Even if the outer world provides opportunities, the inner world must be ready to release the weight of self-imposed chains. These chains come in the form of limiting beliefs, unresolved fears, unexamined attachments. To let them go is not easy, but the pull of freedom makes the effort worthwhile. The irresistible nature of freedom lies in the fact that once you glimpse it, you know it was never outside of you. It was always waiting within, silent, patient, undisturbed. Freedom is also irresistible because it carries with it an energy that is contagious. When you see someone living from a place of inner freedom, there is a radiance that cannot be faked. They move lightly, they speak authentically, and their very presence invites others to question the boundaries of their own cages. This is why freedom is never just personal, it ripples outward, influencing those who come near it. The one who is free does not need to convince others because freedom itself speaks louder than words. And so, to encounter freedom is to encounter the essence of life itself. It is not optional, it is not negotiable, and it cannot be denied. The reason it is irresistible is simple. It is the very breath of existence calling us back to ourselves.